During a contentious hearing on Wednesday, that hearing in Senate Judiciary, Hawaii Democratic Senator Mazie Hirono pressed Attorney General Barr on statements he had made to both the House and Senate committees that Kristen just referenced.
To Congress. You told Representative Charlie Crist that you didn't know what objections Mueller's team might have to your March 24th so-called summary. You told Senator Chris Van Hollen that you didn't know if Bob Mueller supported your conclusions, but you knew. You lied.
Senator Hirono joins me now. Senator, thank you very much for being with us. I just want to share with you, if you didn't hear the breaking news, that the White House says the president discussed the conclusions of the Mueller report, that there was, quote, no collusion with Vladimir Putin today. Now, I'm wondering whether you and the Senate, whether the Intelligence Committee members, perhaps in some sort of executive session, want to know what he told, because we know that there are notes, there's always notes of these conversations. Right. What did he tell Vladimir Putin? Was it what he accepted in Helsinki? Was he sharing with Vladimir Putin that there was nothing going on with Russia, which has been his contention? Or was he warning Vladimir Putin not to attack the American elections again?
I doubt very much that he told Putin not to attack the American elections again. That's not where the president goes. But frankly, we don't know what he talks about with Putin or practically any of the other totalitarian type leaders that he seems to have an affinity for. So this is the president once again acting the way he does, which is not to have any witnesses. And right now, with the entire Mueller situation, he considers it over, and so does Lindsey Graham. But it is not over. We'd like to hear from Mueller, and I stick by my what I said, that Barr lied to Congress.
What should the repercussions be, if any, and how can there be any, since any referral for lying to Congress or whatever else it would be would go to the Justice Department under, of course, William Barr?
Yeah, we can expect that the Justice Department will not prosecute any kind of contempt of Congress decision, but then we have to resort to the courts, which is what we have to do with just about every decision, every executive order that this president puts out. That there are more than 80 challenges to the actions of this administration. So, we're constantly having to go to court. Other people are constantly having to go to court to vindicate our rights and stand for the rule of law. So this is the president once again doing the two things that he cares about most: protecting himself and money. And right now he's very busy protecting himself. And that's why I've characterized what goes on at the White House as a moral dead zone. And you enter that dead zone and you end up with an attorney general who can't even tell me that telling the White House counsel to lie is not okay. He can't answer that.
James Comey, in an op-ed, wrote yesterday that the proximity to an amoral leader reveals something depressing. He wrote, I think that's at least part of what we've been seeing with Bill Barr and Rod Rosenstein. It takes character like Mr. Mattis's to avoid the damage, because Mr. Trump eats your soul in small bites.
Yes.
Your reaction to that?
I agree with that, and this is why I look at the White House as a moral dead zone. And you enter that moral dead zone, and anybody who disagrees with the president is out the door. And so the president makes it very clear that he demands loyalty, which basically only goes one way, and that is to him. And if you're not adequately loyal to him, out you go. So this is a moral dead zone, and all the people around him cannot really make decisions based on any kind of a moral compass, because there is none in this White House. It's all about protecting himself.
Do you expect that you're going to be able to get testimony from Mueller, if not Don McGahn?
I certainly hope that we can get testimony from Mueller, but of course Lindsey Graham has no intention, apparently, of calling Mueller. But thank goodness that the House is being led by Democrats who have every intention of pursuing the truth. And so my hope is that they will continue the investigations into the Trump organization's what I would call nefarious doings, and get to the bottom of all of these kinds of questionable activities. And I think the American people, as well as Congress, needs to know what's going on. That is our responsibility, the oversight responsibility.
Senator Mazie Hirono, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Aloha.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.